So you're wanting to get into calisthenics. You see all these jacked physiques online doing crazy shit. So you order your first pair of parallettes, you try a bunch of random stuff, you get frustrated, and you feel like you're just not making clear enough progress. Everything's overwhelming. Well, lucky you've come across this video because this was exactly me 5 years ago. I had no idea what I was doing with calisthenics. COVID began, so I was pretty much forced into it, even though I'd always wanted to do it. Luckily, fast forward 5 years, I'm on the end of it, but it took me a good few years of doing on and off weight training, not following the right routine, not doing the right form to get to where I am. And only in the last year and a half, I'd say, is when I've actually seen the true progress and the true results. So if you want to fast track your journey, follow to the end of the video because this is exactly what I've walked through with a lot of my clients who have seen pretty insane results in as little as 2 months. I'm going to talk you through how to build the basics and how to actually optimize building the basics so you can get through those beginner stages as quickly as possible. I'm going to talk you through what goals to exactly aim for in those beginner stages. I'm going to talk through the best way to continue to build strength once those basic foundations are ticked off, and how to actually start programming toward those advanced skills. So if you want the perfect video that's going to walk you through ground zero, beginner stages, progressing as quickly as you can to those immediate intermediate levels, and knowing how to progress to get to those advanced levels, continue with following on. I'm going to detail absolutely everything you need to know. So let's get stuck into it. So beginner levels and building their foundations, building those basics, but actually optimally building them so you can get through these boring beginner stages. I wouldn't say boring, they are fun, but you can get through these beginner stages a lot quicker and finally start working to those intermediate advanced skills. So this is what you need to be doing. You want to be focusing on 2 key push exercises, 2 key pull exercises, and 1 key core exercise that I'll explain in a second. With these key exercises, you have to make sure you're progressing through their variations until you tick off the key goals and that key marker that's going to kind of set you up to start working on those intermediate levels. And you also have to make sure you're prioritizing these 5 exercises and you're not just training them once a week. You're probably not going to build too much strength, or at least not as quickly as training them 2 times a week, 3 times a week, even potentially up to 4 times a week, or building up to that. So you have to be smart with prioritizing these exercises. So the first push exercise we're working through are push-ups. And these obviously you can start with kneeling push-ups, then you can do negative push-ups, and then finally obviously getting to a point where you can do push-ups. What I would be aiming for is getting to a point where you can do 15 clean rep push-ups. If you want to find a better way to progress toward doing those as well, you can also just do elevated push-ups. You can do this on a Smith machine or a squat rack, that works well, and incrementally work your way down until you can do body weight. But you want to be getting to a point where you can tick off 15 clean reps with a 1 effort max set. And then from here, you can start working toward those vertical press push-ups now. So pike push-ups is going to be one of those key goals we'll also work toward too. So push-ups is one of those key foundation exercises. And eventually, once you can do 15 clean push-ups, then you can work toward pike push-ups. So you can start with half pike push-ups, eventually getting to a normal clean rep pike push-up. And if you can tick off 12 reps of these, you're pretty much set to go. And the second key push skill we'll focus on are chest dips. So with chest dips, you may have to start obviously by going and building up your push-up strength. It might be a little bit easier for you there. That'll definitely carry over to this, but you want to start with assisted chest dips until you can perform a normal chest dip with good form and a body weight. You also want to work up to getting 12 reps of this before you start working toward those intermediate levels too. So the first pull focus skill is inverted rows. So this is a little bit easier than the next one, but inverted rows is a great way to build that foundational back strength and rowing strength in that horizontal moving pattern. To progress through these, you start a little bit more vertically and slowly get more horizontal until you're doing it with some form of feet elevation and you can get completely horizontal. Get to a point where you can get 15 reps at a complete horizontal level and you should be pretty good to go from there. And secondly, I'm sure you guys know this is a foundation exercise, but pull-ups. So obviously you're going to want to start with assisted pull-ups, and obviously also getting stronger with the inverted rows will help this, just as push-ups will help chest dips as well. But start with assisted pull-ups, working in those lower rep ranges as well until you can perform a normal pull-up. And then from here, you want to work up to 12 reps of pull-ups. And the final core focused exercise that I believe is the most important, as it's building foundational grip strength and it's also building that hip flexion and core strength as well, is hanging leg raises. So to obviously manipulate the joint angles here of your knee to make it harder, you start with knee raises, slowly get a point till you start straightening your legs out until you can do a clean rep at a 90-degree position. So that is your hanging leg raises. Work up to a point where you can do 12 clean reps and you're pretty much set to go. If you've ticked off all of those 5 skills, you've got 12 chest dips, 12 pull-ups, 12 pike push-ups and 12 hanging leg raises. You are absolutely set and ready to move toward those intermediate skills. But there's one thing that I have not mentioned, and that is handstands. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritties of how to get a handstand, but you want to be prioritizing this and trying to train it every day or every other day with those wall-assisted handstands. They're going to give you the most bang for your buck. So that's the beginner level. It's pretty much summed up here. If you're in these beginner stages, here's an upper body day for an example of something that I would follow in terms of kind of reps, rest period, and general exercises. Obviously, you're going to want to train this multiple times a week, and you'd be doing different variations of this day. I wouldn't just only train this day, but that's an example for you. So the intermediate level and when to start building strength toward those more advanced skills and progressing past the basics. So a lot of people get this area wrong, and I think this is probably the most common thing. So many people are told that you need to get to a point where you can do 25 pull-ups, 25 chest dips, and 50 fucking push-ups or whatever it is, but that is probably the biggest thing compromising your strength gains. I'm not saying you don't want to keep training those foundations, you certainly can, but you have to start prioritizing harder exercises in those strength dominant phases. You want to be working in the lower rep ranges to build strength. Those high rep things, they're only building endurance, sure, a little bit of size and a little bit of conditioning, but you can continue training those, but you just have to be smarter by prioritizing harder variations of those exercises. So you're probably thinking, what does this look like? So for some people, it can look like weighted calisthenics. I think that's a great way to build strength. But for most people, I think you should go down doing progressing from pull-ups to side pull-ups and eventually archer pull-ups. You can also do explosive pull-ups and start working toward a muscle-up variation here. In terms of those push-focused skills, you want to start working toward harder pike push-up variations and eventually working toward a handstand push-up. Chest dips can start progressing to planche variations and building up that straight arm shoulder flexion strength, which is super crucial as well. And this is also the stage where you have to start mastering your handstands. You should have been working on it in those beginner stages, but now this is where you need to start kind of making sure the handstand balance is not a limiting factor to progressing you to get a handstand push-up or a planche or all those other advanced skills. So making sure you're prioritizing this handstand, and you want to make sure you can get a 30-second clean handstand before you even think about moving to the advanced level. So what I recommend doing here is making sure, as I said, you prioritize these harder variations of those basics. You can incorporate some beginner skill variations. As I said, you can start working towards some planche stuff. You can maybe throw in some easy front lever variations and some L-sits here, but making sure you're prioritizing those advanced skills, doing a little bit of skill stuff, and then finishing off building those foundations and still doing some body weight beginner exercises in a little bit of a higher rep phase. But as I said, this is at the end of the session where it's less of a priority. Here is an example of a push and pull day that you could certainly follow in this phase. So this is probably the most important part of the video, and this is programming. And it's probably something that most people get wrong, and the reason why some people progress really quick and some people don't. So firstly, training frequency. You want to be training key movement patterns 2 to 3 times a week. And once you get a little bit stronger and start working toward more advanced stuff, you may want to start training it 3, 4, even sometimes 5 days a week to optimize building that strength. Obviously, training volume will be variable here, but frequency is super important to build strength, regardless of what level you're at. Secondly, rest periods. If your goal is to build strength for that exercise, you want to be resting at least 3 minutes between those sets. If something's a little bit less strength focused, you're just kind of repping it out, you're building foundations, then you can get away with a couple minutes, sometimes even 1 if you're kind of really rushed. But for those strength focused sets, the more you can practically rest, the absolute better. Thirdly, and probably one of the most important ones, is training intensity. Contrary to belief, you do not want to be pushing your sets to complete failure. One, it compromises your form, as we really want to make sure we're building correct form, especially for those skill focused exercises. So always leave your ego behind, focus on key and perfect form, but also it compromises the amount of volume you can get. If you're completely smashing each set, you may only get 2 quality sets in, and the rest of your sets will be completely compromised. But also there is plenty of research to say that not going to failure actually builds more strength than going to complete failure, even when the whole volume is equated. So not only can you get more volume in, but you can actually get more strength adaptations even when it's the same amount of volume. So it's genuinely a win-win, not even to mention the amount of form gains you get when you don't go to complete failure. So keep your form in check. You do want to test yourself every now and then, and don't get me wrong, I do it. I definitely have to always keep my ego in check for sure. So 90% of your training, make sure it's done with perfect form, you're not pushing your sets to failure, and you're doing it all correctly. Every now and then, completely fine, test your limits, see where you're at. I think it's great, and it kind of encourages a little bit more adherence and a bit of motivation too. So a final message from me, and probably the most important piece of advice I could give to any beginner or intermediate or advanced level, is to 1, enjoy the process, 2, be consistent, and 3, find some form of community to share your progress and share your journey with. Not only is it important to get feedback and see other people doing well and they can kind of help you, but the sheer adherence and motivation you get when you're sharing the journey and being a part of community is second to none. And I think probably the biggest thing that separates beginners and people who get to advance is having that sense of community. Right now I have a free calisthenics community that you can join. It's a school community. You get access to myself personally, tutorials, you can share your journey, get feedback from me and the other people in the community. So I think it's probably going to be the most important thing and something I wish I had when I first started. So jump on board that, obviously completely free. I haven't even released it to the public yet. So if you've watched this video and you come this far, there you go. That's my kind of token of gratitude. I appreciate it. Hope it all helps. And be sure to subscribe, whatever else you say. All the best. Love you guys.